we decided to speak with Mr. Wickramasinghe regarding these charges. I interviewed him earlier today to find out what he makes of the findings of this commission, the indictment of President Sirisena and the charges of witch hunt against the Rajapaksas, the UNHRC probe and the visit of the Pakistani Prime Minister to Colombo. Here are some excerpts from that interview. Mr. Wickramasinghe, welcome to Beyond, sir.
It's nice to be with you again.
How have you
been? Nice to speak to you, and unfortunately we are not together.
Right, sir. Soon enough. Your country is in the news. The Presidential Commission of Inquiry has come up with its findings. And my first question to you is, what do you make of them?
Well, the full report is not out yet. But the Commission had to acknowledge that I was not informed, and there's no finding against any other ministers from the United National Party. So we really have not been in it. We have been outside that.
But the Commission accuses you of having shown a lax approach towards Islamic extremism. Do you agree with that?
No. After the Paris bombing, I got the police to start a religious extremism unit, which followed all the extremism. There was a separate group investigating these matters. Secondly, I was drafting the new counter-terrorism law. We got help from UK. Thirdly, whenever the security forces brought these matters up, or the police, I said take action, crack down hard, but first consult the Attorney General or get legal advice, otherwise you get caught up in a series of cases instead of doing investigations. My issue is, again, as I told you, I have not seen it, but if you go by the criteria for political responsibility or the criteria for criminal responsibility, there is no such thing called a lax attitude. How to judge attitude, whether you are lax or not? I don't know. I certainly haven't tolerated extremism, and I won't.
I'm just quoting from whatever I've seen of the Commission's report. It also observes, as you also said, that you were not invited to National Security Council meetings by President Sirisena after the constitutional crisis in 2018. But, and I'm quoting here, your failure to raise the issue in Parliament or at the Cabinet to restore the status quo was not acceptable. Do you believe that was a lapse, sir?
No, because this was only an advisory body by the President. And after he dismissed me as Prime Minister, when Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa was Prime Minister for 52 days, he did not invite him to the meeting either. And to my knowledge, there was one meeting in January, which I was not invited, I heard of later. Thereafter, he did not call meetings of the National Security Council. He called ministry meetings, which means virtually everyone was there, except the people outside and the Foreign Ministry. So he had regular meetings with his security people, but if he had decided to scrap the National Security Council or not summon it.
What do you think of what the committee has said on the role of the then President, Sirisena? He has been indicted by the same committee that he set up while he was in office, and the report said, and I'm quoting again, the balance of probability was that Sirisena was told by his intelligence chief about warnings before the attacks occurred. Do you believe that this is a very serious charge to be made against an ex-president on the basis of probability?
It is a serious charge. And I'd like to look at the report as to what they mean by balance of probability and how it relates to the offence of criminal negligence, which without looking at that is difficult to comment on this legal matter. It's a serious charge, all right. And there was, I think, contradictory evidence about whether he was informed or not. So how they have weighed it also is, we have to look at that, how the Commission has weighed this, the evidence, which is not available at the moment. It's just some executive summary that is coming out.
I understand that the Commission interviewed some 400 individuals. Do you think the probe was not thorough enough?
No, it's not a question of who they interviewed, or even I was called to give evidence, but the basis, which must obviously be there in the report. All I'm saying is that we should see the report to see what exactly the balance of probability and why they have accepted evidence of others as against the president, former president. I mean, that's normal in a court of law or in a commission. The fact is that they have written a report, but the report is not available to us yet.
The government, the Rajapaksa government, has been accused of carrying out a political witch hunt, sir, for the past many months. They've jailed MPs and former leaders, while finding ways to pardon army officials accused of war crimes and save the people who are close to the establishment. Do you believe that this probe report is independent of such political influences?
In regard to the question you brought up, well, there's a what was called a political victimization commission, inquiry commission, and there they have recommended that the courts take certain steps. Now that's against the judicial power and the independence of the courts. And all these cases were filed by the Attorney General. And what measures the Attorney General should take? Again, in exercising his decision whether to prosecute or not, the Attorney General has an independent role. So you cannot ask him, direct him. We can't direct the Attorney General to act. So those are serious issues that have come up.
Would you say the current dispensation has been more effective in combating extremism in Sri Lanka?
I think after the April bomb, we were able to root out the rest of the extremism. As far as the Tamils, LTT, terrorists were concerned, LTT movement, no, there is no such movement now. It's been monitored well. Nothing in the South idea among the Sinhalese. What we had was this group that claimed affiliation to the ISIS or sympathizers. And now we've done a fair amount of work. I think by that time it was basically rooted out. But that's still being carried on by this government.
So you're saying that the record of the Rajapaksa government is not necessarily better than yours?
No, it's just continuing what we have done. There was nothing in many areas. It's just looking at if there are any other sort of terrorist groups equivalent to the bombing. You must not give rise to any tensions, racial or religious. Then obviously you can deal with this much. It's much easier to deal with it.
Is that what's happening according to you?
Well, there's a lot of racial and religious politics going on. Must try and reduce it.
And how do you think that will have a bearing on the security situation?
In any country, when you get tensions, then the tensions reflect on the security situation. People are less inclined to give information.
So you're saying that the government's approach is going to be counterproductive in the long term?
No, I just gave some advice that at the moment there isn't much tension, but you must not allow tension to build up.
So the issue of rights violations in Sri Lanka has been taken up at the United Nations Human Rights Council, and it has been called, quote-unquote, serious and deteriorating, the situation in Sri Lanka. The Foreign Minister of Sri Lanka, Dinesh Gunawardene, has said that the resolution is politically motivated, and I'm quoting, that Sri Lanka has been subjected to unprecedented propaganda campaigns. What's your view?
We took a different view, and we were able to resolve these issues basically because there was an announcement made jointly by President Rajapaksa and the Secretary General of the UN, Ban Ki-moon. In our view, you couldn't get behind it. So we went along. Whatever had been started, we allowed them to carry on with the cases. And that's our view. So if you don't think that the communique is a basis of acting, then you have problems. The government has taken a different view.
What do you make of the recent decisions on aid and infrastructure projects involving India, Japan and the US vis-a-vis the deals that are being struck with China? Is there a trend? Do you see a display of intent by the government of Sri Lanka?
We did a number of we planned out a number of connectivity projects and power projects, the infrastructure for the future. And Chinese were interested in some of these. We selected the Chinese for some of them, and some of them have been selected before the government came. We signed the agreements. We've also selected the Indians, the Japanese, and the US for certain other projects like the Kurunegala-Trincomalee Road. The US was helping us. Then the Central Highway, the ports, and those power projects. And the government has gone back on those. I think it's a serious mistake to go back on those. Even China can't fill that gap up. And if we and the Indians are going to share the port capacity, then at some stage we have to work together.
Do you think there's a sustained effort to resist partnerships with India, Japan and the US?
No, I don't know. It's really an issue. I heard that India is still having discussions. I don't know. I not followed it. But those projects are essential if Sri Lanka is to develop and become a hub of the Indian Ocean.
The Prime Minister of Pakistan is also visiting Sri Lanka. How do you assess Colombo's relationship with Islamabad?
We have a good relationship and a close relationship with Islamabad. And this, I think, is an overdue visit by a Pakistani President or Prime Minister of Sri Lanka. Of course, Mr. Imran Khan is well known in the country. He has a lot of personal friends here.
The Prime Minister of Pakistan also raised Kashmir in Sri Lanka. Do you think that was right for him to raise a bilateral issue on an entirely different platform? And do you think the government of Sri Lanka expected this?
Well, you have to expect Kashmir to be raised if the Pakistan Prime Minister comes. And the government in Colombo must know how to handle it.
How do you think they've handled it?
I don't know how they've handled it, but I want to know that it's a bilateral issue to be sorted out between India and Pakistan.
It is.
And we hope the violence will stop and there can be fruitful discussions.
Do you think that the Sri Lankan government expected this because they cancelled at the last minute his address to Parliament citing COVID restrictions?
I don't know, but I think the COVID issue was also there. But I suppose the government in Sri Lanka has to expect it. Wherever they go, whether they visit Sri Lanka or UK or Washington, the same issue will be raised.
I'm sure the government could have made its intent clear, but you know how this works better than I do. I'm going to thank you very much, Mr. Wickramasinghe, for sharing your thoughts with us and for talking to us.
Okay, thank you.